Does any member wish to change his vote? Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. The vote count shows 70 in favor. There are more than 2/3 having voted in the affirmative. The rules are now suspended, and the House will have under consideration House Bill number 122. Good gentleman from District 32.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask consent from the body to cease from further reading of House Bill 122.
Without objection, the gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Speaker. This bill is a very passionate one for me. I brought this forth this is the third session now. What this bill does is pretty straightforward. It allows school staff with enhanced concealed carry permit to carry a concealed firearm in schools K through 12. There are some exceptions in this bill. The staff member has to have the firearm on their person at all times. It can't be in a drawer. It can't be in a safe. It has to be on their person with immediate control of the firearm. The enhanced permit holder has to inform the principal or superintendent that they do have the enhanced permit and they could be carrying it at any time. And that principal or superintendent must inform local law enforcement, city police, sheriff's office, ISP, if they all apply, of that school staff member and who they are and a picture of that staff member. This is in place to make sure law enforcement knows who could be carrying a firearm if something does happen. It's a safety precaution so law enforcement can be aware and know who could be carrying a firearm, like I said. I know in the past this has been an issue about local control or an argument that people have brought up to me about it. I don't like any government restricting your constitutional protections. This is a Second Amendment issue, and for me, the Second Amendment issue the Second Amendment right doesn't stop at the door of a school. It just doesn't. Shall not be infringed doesn't mean in a school, does apply to a school. I don't want local government restricting my First Amendment rights, my Fourth Amendment rights, or a school board doing that. I know certain organizations are opposed to this, the Chiefs, the Sheriff's Association, School Board Association, which is pretty common for gun bills in the past. We've heard other gun bills in the past, and they usually oppose those bills. I do have a sheriff in my district, Sheriff Mabee, Kerby County. He fully supports this bill. He testified in committee in support of it. He understands that law enforcement cannot react instantly. It takes 10 minutes, for the response time of most police departments to respond to a situation. And that is an eternity with these situations. It's over by then usually. 2, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, that situation's usually over. And we have dozens of victims killed, injured. So the purpose behind this bill is one of the purposes is to stop that threat quickly and save lives. One part of this bill is for me is to bring down the gun-free school zone signs. To me, that is as a target saying, come in our schools and shoot us up. Those need to go. Most shootings, I believe, recently have been gun-free zones. They're just targets. As stated, the response time for most police departments is 10 minutes. My district is very rural and takes much longer in some instances. It can take 15 minutes or longer for law enforcement to show up. Hundreds of rounds can be shot. Many kids' lives could be gone. This isn't a bill about gun pride. This is a bill about school safety and our children. The firearm is a tool. Simple as that. And the fear of this tool is, I don't get it. It's just a tool to help our children, to save lives. I carry constantly, as most of you know, as a tool and to save lives. isn't about being tough. It's just a tool. There are thousands of what-ifs out there. What if this scenario, what if that scenario? And as I said in the past, we've had, these what-ifs come up with other gun legislation. Constitutional carry was a big example. We had those people out there that are fear-mongering. The sky's going to fall. We're going to have all this mayhem. We're going to have criminal activity rise. Did it happen? No. The crime statistics just didn't rise. No different in this situation. We're not going to see mayhem. For example, Utah's had this legislation in effect for about 25 years. There was one incident in Utah. A school teacher did drop her firearm in the bathroom, and the round went off, shot in the toilet. So I think those odds are pretty good. One incident in 25 years, and sure, it does pose a risk of accidents at times, and so does carrying a firearm anywhere in the state of Idaho or anywhere in the country. But I do think the risk of this small risk far outweighs the greater risk that's posed here. Of our children being shot, killed, teachers. California even had this law in effect for quite a while. 1967 is when they had when they instituted their concealed carry program. And they were allowed to carry in schools K through 12 up until 1994 when the Gun-Free School Zone Act in California was put into place. So we're talking 27 years. And the only incident I'm aware of in California during this time was an off-duty police officer teaching the class, and his round went off on accident. Well, his fault, of course. So no concealed permit holders in California had an accident except for this off-duty police officer. It's been talked about, how are these people trained to react like an officer can? Well, I'm ex-law enforcement. You cannot train for a stressful situation. You just can't. You can't train for a gun in your face. You just can't train for that. You can fire thousands of rounds. You can train with certain scenarios, which I did in law enforcement. And I believe, I trust Idahoans to be responsible. Most Idahoans carry responsibly. They're not waving their gun around. Most of them have grew up with guns, train with their firearms often. Is this bill perfect? No. Are these people going to be perfect with their firearms? No. Will a teacher pull a firearm in the classroom to save her children and possibly have it stray around? That's very possible. And also is with an officer. Another question that's been posed is how can law enforcement know of all these teachers or school staff that are carrying? Well, that's why I had the provision put in there to inform law enforcement of who could be carrying. But I also trust law enforcement. Being ex-law enforcement, we're trained to know who's a threat and who's not a threat. I trust that training with them. I also encourage these school staff members to receive training from law enforcement voluntarily and have a relationship with law enforcement and vice versa, reaching out to each other, knowing what's going on, know who's carrying, and have a relationship with each other. I expect that, and I want that. So with this, I stand for any questions, and I ask for your yes vote. Thank you.
You've heard the motion. Is there further debate on the motion? Good lady from 35.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand to debate for House Bill 122. So in committee, I shared that when I was in one of my areas talking to people, this gentleman that was about 70, 75, he said when he was going to school, they would take their rifles on the bus in the morning. They would take them into the school, put them in a closet, At the end of the day, they would pick up their rifles, take them back onto the bus, and the bus driver would drop them off about a half mile from home, and they would hunt on the way home. And I thought, wow, and maybe you can think yourselves how far we have, how things have changed that many of us are afraid to have, even to see a gun. We're afraid to allow people with enhanced permits to carry one. I actually have my enhanced permit, and I maybe should declare Rule 80 because I work in the school district, and I usually drive activity bus, and I would appreciate that opportunity to legally carry to protect my students. If you think about it, driving a bus down the road, we stop, somebody could jump in the back really easily. I've thought about this before. And so I want to be able to protect those students. And within the bill, it says that you don't have a duty to protect, but I want that option. And and if I'll be traveling, into different school districts, this would really enable me and others who want to be able to protect our students to have that option. So, and I also live in a rural area where the response time, we have amazing law enforcement, sheriff office and everything, but it's difficult at times for them, their response time. And so I would really encourage your yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you, good lady, and your Rule 80 declaration will be noted. For further debate, good gentleman from 19.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Local control, local control, local control. Our school districts already have the ability to authorize school employees to carry firearms on our school grounds. So I'm going to be voting to support the continued principle. But there's also 3 additional points I'd like to make. Number 1, the police chiefs are opposed to this. The sheriffs are opposed to this. I'm opposed to this. The schools are opposed to this. The administrators are opposed to this. The teachers are opposed to this because this bill would expose our children to needless risk with virtually no statistical likelihood of reward. Ton of risk, ton of downside. Number 2, by not including a duty to perform in the bill, almost undermines the whole premise of the bill. The bill's design is to create opportunities where a good guy with a gun can stop the bad guy with the gun. But if weapon holders don't have a duty to perform like our law enforcement officers do, what's the point of exposing our children to all the risk? And lastly, and this is a recurring theme that we've heard this week, constitutional interpretation does matter. And I respect the good gentleman from 32's interpretation of the Constitution. Mine's a little different. Some read the black letter of the Constitution to conclude that Second Amendment rights may be infringed under no set of circumstances, but as has come up repeatedly, our constitutional rights are not absolute. They can't be. If they were absolute, we wouldn't even be able to have contracts enforced. We wouldn't have property rights. We couldn't be kept safe within reason because everyone would be able to do whatever they want. And society can't function that way. So I'm going to close by quoting former Justice Scalia, who wrote in his famed opinion in Heller that Heller should not be taken to cast doubt on the long-standing prohibitions on firearms in sensitive places such as schools. So with that, I'd ask for your red light.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate the opportunity to debate today. I am when I have time anyway, a substitute school teacher. And as some of you might be aware, a military veteran. I was an Army airborne and air assault qualified infantryman, served with the 101st Airborne Division, and was part of the invasion of Afghanistan. Needless to say, I don't say that to brag, I say that to provide you with some of my experience. So needless to say, I have extensive training with many different firearms in this situation, and most applicably, pistols. So it is a fact that if there is a shooting in a school, You know, we have resource officers now, but if that resource officer is nowhere near that classroom, there's just not enough time for these people to react properly. And people are getting shot within seconds. Multiple people can be shot. And if I'm in a classroom and I'm armed, believe me, I know exactly what I need to do. And if I'm not the first one to go down, I can react properly and professionally as the situation warrants. Every time I have to go into a school unarmed, because, you know, it's not allowed by, you know, the school district, I consider it to be a dereliction of duty, because I not allowed to protect the children from harm if it comes in. You know, if there was a shooting and I wasn't able to respond, gosh, I'd feel horrible for the rest of my life, because I know, as a former soldier who's put his life on the line for this country, that I could have absolutely done something. And so, I urge you to give your green light on this. California, of all places, has this in its code. So I think Idaho should be able to as well. And I absolutely believe that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. So let's get this done. Let's give it a green light. Thank you very much.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from 9.
Mr. Speaker, just a couple comments.
Gentleman has the floor.
I really like this bill. I wish this bill would have been in place 25 years ago. When these first started having school shootings, I thought, as a superintendent, I go, you know what? We went through all kind of protocols and putting locks on doors and making it difficult for people to get into school and all your visitor passes and all kind of thing. I always thought to myself, you know, we got some pretty tough secretaries around. I walk around, you know, they always tell me, we shot an elk last year, or got my deer last weekend. Okay, those gals had a gun, or a custodian, or a principal, or one of the teachers had a gun. That completely changes the mentality of people going to go try to go into a school and shoot people. You look at, you know, I've studied these school shootings, and for the most part, they've done a pretty good analysis on where the security people are at, or what the chances, or what time to go in when there's the best likelihood to get in and shoot some people. Hey, if they don't know, if they have no idea where the guns are, that's not very much fun to walk in the front door and start, you know, pull your gun out and the secretary take you out. That completely changes the whole mentality. So I'm telling you right now, I love this bill, and I wish we'd been with Utah 25 years ago.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from 7.
I just need to declare Rule 80, please.
Gentleman's declaration should be noted. Gentleman from 32.
Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that I guess I'm conflicted on. And before you start writing the posts that Representative Gibbs is opposed to the Second Amendment, I'd like to tell you, particularly you folks that are new, a little about me. I fell in love with guns at a 4-H camp when I was probably 10 or 12. The Idaho State Police were at this camp and did a demonstration. And I remember vividly the things they did at that time. And I also know perhaps why some of them don't hear so well, particularly the older officers. The gentlemen, they carried revolvers back then. I think they were either 38s or 357s, I'm not certain. But the gentleman from the demonstration team of the Idaho State Police that came to this 4-H camp held a diamond ring out like this and put the revolver back over his shoulder like this and shot a target behind him and hit it. And I've never been able to even see the sights, let alone pull that feed off. That may be why I don't hear so well today. I may have tried that a time or two. But ladies and gentlemen, you know, I'm a life member of the NRA. I belong to several shooting organizations. I have several guns, more than my wife would like, and I've never been a gun I didn't like. I actually have applied for a federal firearms license. I've had a concealed weapons license for numerous years. I have the enhanced concealed weapons license. I used to be licensed also in the state of Utah, but with reciprocal rights, I no longer maintain my Utah license. I started building rifles in the summer of 2019. I just last week completed my 21st rifle build. So I'm about as pro Second Amendment as anybody in the building. The problem I have, and my good seatmate has worked hard on this bill, and I will admit that, and the bill, he brought the bill last year, and he brought an earlier version of the bill again this year. And the bill is much better than it was, and it's been improved every time he's reworked the bill. The problem I have with the bill is an enhanced concealed weapons permit only requires that you demonstrate the ability to load and fire the gun. I believe it calls for firing 90 rounds of ammunition, but there's no minimum qualification standard. There's no retraining standard in it. And I think that's vital that those kinds of things be included if we're going to put guns in schools. We've had guns in schools at least since 2015. Mark Nye, who is now Mark Nye, not Mark Gee, pardon me, Mark Gee. Mark Nye's a senator. Mark Gee, the superintendent of Preston High School, was at Garden Valley when they put guns in the schools at Garden Valley. I believe there may be guns in the school in Grace, Idaho, as we speak. But so schools have the ability to do this now. I just don't think this particular piece of legislation is particularly soup yet, and therefore I'll be voting against it, and you can label me what you want. But, ladies and gentlemen, I am awfully pro Second Amendment.
Is there further debate? Hearing none. Good gentleman from 24.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the good gentleman from 32 rise for a question?
Gentleman yield?
Gentleman yields.
Gentleman yields.
Yeah, thank you, good gentleman. If I understand the bill correctly, we're talking about school employees that can get permission to bring the enhanced, with the enhanced can get permission to have a gun. This does not apply to the general public, is that correct?
Gentleman from 32.
Chairman, and good gentleman, no, it's just for school staff only, so no public is allowed, correct.
So, follow-up question then.
Gentleman from 24.
So why do we prohibit a sign that would say gun-free zone to tell the general public they shouldn't carry a gun into the school?
Gentleman from 32.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, so why are we telling the public that I'm just clarifying, so why are we telling the public they can't carry a firearm into the school?
Gentleman 24.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good gentlemen. The bill says something about a school cannot put up a sign that says this is a gun-free zone. And so, to me, that's a sign that we telling the public, don't bring your guns in, to the school.
Gentleman 32.
Speaker, good gentlemen, that isn't the legislation because it's open for that school staff to carry, so they can bring a gun into the school, so that so it wouldn't apply in that case as being a gun-free zone. If it was gun-free, there wouldn't be one gun in that school or a possibility of one gun being in that school. That's why that sign would come down.
Gentleman 24. Further debate. Hey, good lady from 9.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a very good bill. The gentleman from 32 has worked for 3 years on this bill. He has compromised over and over and over, yet kept the principle of what this is. Banks have armed guards, but our schools do not. Does that mean we think more of protecting money than we do our precious children? I would hope not. Now, I love our law enforcement people. I think they're fantastic. They protect all of us all the time. But they will admit they cannot be everywhere. And when seconds count and they're not there, somebody had better be there with a gun to protect yourself and the kids or whoever else might be there. I have worked on gun legislation since 1990 down here, excuse me. And I want to tell you about the first one that I came down here to testify on. It was a very simple bill that changed the word may to shall, that the sheriff shall issue concealed permits, because suddenly sheriffs were refusing to do that and they were canceling concealed permits everywhere. So my NRA rep called me, who I knew really well, and said, would you go testify? Because I had had a really dear 4-H leader friend who had been run off the road in the evening, about 11 o'clock, as she was coming home out in a very desolated place, going to her ranch, by 3 men. They ran her off the road in her pickup, and they came up to her window on both sides with baseball bats. She had her gun with her. She carried a .44, a Dirty Harry. And when she pulled that up, they fled. Now, her gun was concealed because it was in her purse. She had a giant purse in those days. But she was illegal doing that. So I decided I would come and testify on this bill. My own sheriff, who was a Democrat at the time, called me because he heard I was going to do this, and he said, I want you to know I'm having nothing to do with what the Sheriff's Association has planned for the hearing. And that's all he'd tell me. So when I got down here, that was when we had the gold room. That was the giant room, and it was maybe about the size of our chamber. But it was, well, not even as big, but that was the big hearing room. And to walk into that, there was a little narrow hallway, and everybody had to sign up. And there was a sheriff there holding a clipboard, writing down everybody's name that signed up in support of that bill. Well, that ticked me off. And so I wrote my name in giant letters, and then I looked at him and said, do you think you can read that? And then I went into the gold room to see 30 sheriffs standing with their arms crossed against the wall, obviously were packing, in a sign of intimidation for anybody that was testifying. Well, that really ticked me off. So when this hearing finished, I went up to the chairman and said, did you know that the sheriffs, are at the door writing people's name down that support this bill? And so the good senator, in fact, got up and went to talk to that sheriff, and he came back. They had some very loud words. I thought we were going to have a fist fight. And he came back and said, if anybody even gets a ticket for running a stop sign that has been here to testify, you let me know. So we had a governor who was a Democrat at the time, and it was a Democrat senator that carried that bill. But that was the first instance that I saw law enforcement organization opposing citizens having guns. Through the years, I've seen this repeatedly. And it's not the individual law enforcement. My own sheriffs have totally supported every bill we have brought through here. So please, because the organizations are opposed, don't let that sway you. This is about protecting our children. This is a good bill, and it should pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Hearing none, would the good gentleman from 32 care to close?
Thank you for the good debate. As the good lady said, this is about our kids. I love our kids. I love Idaho kids. I love your kids. I love my kids. So that's a huge reason that I brought this forth. You know, I know that there's been talk about guns in schools and how it can be a huge risk. You know, there's guns all over Idaho. It's not going to be unique to schools. There's playgrounds, churches full of kids. And there's guns there, I promise you that. Theaters full of kids during a summer movie. And I guarantee there's guns there. This won't be any different. The sky's not going to fall. I don't want to wait till our kids are harmed when we can do something now. I don't want to see a Parkland or a Columbine in Idaho, and don't say it can't happen here, because it can and it possibly will. So let's prevent that. Let's have this would-be killer know that if he enters a school, he'll be confronted with an armed person. That is a deterrent. an absolute deterrent. With that, I ask you to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, good gentlemen. Debate is closed. The question is, shall House Bill 122 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the machine and members will record their votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Clerk will read the pairs.
Bedke votes aye. Necochea votes nay.
Majority having voted in favor of, the clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. Majority having voted in favor of House Bill 122, House Bill 122 has passed the House. Is there a correction to title?
No correction to title.
Hearing none, the title is approved and the bill will be transmitted to the Senate.